Now that I'm a professional book editor who's worked with hundreds of authors on hundreds of books over my career, it all makes sense. I'd been a reader my entire life and was always passionate about telling and engaging with stories, much more than more practical endeavors like science or math. When I went to college, it was my dream to study creative writing. In fact, I looked specifically for colleges that allowed you to major in creative writing as an undergrad, which there weren't too many of, or at a minimum where I could study English and minor in creative writing. Studying creative writing is such a unique experience, and I was lucky enough to do it in one of the strongest literary communities in the world, New York City. So today I want to talk about everything my university creative writing experience taught me about writing and publishing, and give some personal anecdotes about my experience going through it, including some embarrassing moments. So let me begin by giving you a sense of my experience. I went to New York University in Manhattan and majored in English literature and minored in creative nonfiction. There was also a program for undergrads when I was there that allowed you to complete a certificate in a program from the School of Professional Studies. So I completed a certificate in book publishing. For my creative writing minor, I took 4 workshop classes, the Introduction in Fiction and Poetry, and then I moved into creative nonfiction and completed 2 master classes in creative nonfiction. I mostly wrote personal essays as my preferred genre. For my certificate in book publishing, I had a number of publishing and editing related courses, including From Writer to Reader, an Introduction to Book Publishing, Grammar Intensive for Publishing Professionals, The Business of Book Publishing for the non-financial major, How to Be a Book Editor, which was obviously one of my favorites because I am now a book editor, Digital Trends in the Book Industry, and A Career in Copy Editing and Freelancing is the New Black. Outside of the certificate in book publishing, I also took a course called The Basics and the Bold Fundamentals of Editing Fiction and Creative Nonfiction. While I was taking these courses, I was also working in the book publishing industry. I had an internship at a top literary agency, and I was editor-in-chief of one of NYU's literary magazines. So I wanted to look back on all of that experience and really think about what I took away from my creative writing and publishing courses. The first lesson, I think, is that your story won't always land, and it's not supposed to. If you're unfamiliar, the way a creative writing workshop works is that each week or whenever you meet, it will be someone's turn to receive feedback, and all of the other students will read the work in advance and prepare their feedback. Usually it's somewhere around 10 people, at least that was the size of the groups I was in. Typically the feedback would be verbal, with the person receiving feedback not saying anything about their work, at least until everyone has said their feedback. Sometimes also they will submit written feedback as well. So the reason why I have this as one of my lessons is because I distinctly remember one experience where the assignment was to write a poem. And by the way, I am very much not a poet by nature. And I was nervous about submitting the poem for these reasons. And we read it to the class, and then the instructor gave his feedback first before the rest of the students. And he had completely misinterpreted what I thought the poem was about. That is somewhat on me because I was trying to go for a metaphorical double meaning, and he was only interpreting it at the surface level meaning. So I was mortified at first, especially because I couldn't jump in and correct him or defend myself because you're typically not supposed to speak when you're getting feedback. But then, thankfully, another student jumped in and said that they thought they interpreted the poem in this way, and it was exactly how I intended. So on the one hand, I felt so embarrassed that my instructor didn't understand what I was going for, but super relieved that my classmate did. I think that was a valuable lesson for me in understanding that everyone is going to respond to a story or any creative work differently. And it wasn't necessarily wrong for my instructor to not pick up on the other meaning. He just had a different experience and understanding of the work, and I had to understand that putting a story or a work of any kind into the world would elicit different interpretations and different responses. I think that's a really valuable lesson for any author or anyone working on creative arts in general to understand. The next lesson I learned is that showing up is really half of the battle, if not the entire battle. In my introductory creative writing courses especially, it was very clear who was taking the work more seriously and who wasn't really engaging that deeply. They wouldn't submit their drafts on time, or their feedback would be really half-baked. And as a result, they didn't really get much out of the course, I don't think. Even if you have an external deadline because you're in a workshop or course setting of some kind, you still have to have personal accountability. It's essential to be internally motivated and driven. Otherwise, the creative work is not going to get done. I think this applies to writers even outside of the university or creative writing workshop setting. You may be innately very talented, but if you don't show up and put in the time, you're likely not going to be much better off than someone who is continually working on their craft, consistently putting in the time and energy and effort that it requires, and is constantly engaging with others to improve. One thing that I love about the craft of writing is that you are guaranteed to improve if you sit down and do the work over and over and over again. If you're a writer or interested in creative writing, you've come to the right channel. Every week, I either talk about tactical writing advice, particularly geared towards fiction authors, or I give insight into the publishing industry, as that is my professional background. So if any of that interests you, please consider subscribing and joining our amazing community of authors. For my returning subscribers, you know what to do. It would mean a lot to me if you scroll down and give me a thumbs up. It really helps out my channel a lot. The next lesson I learned from my creative writing courses is that writing and publishing are different beasts. Though they are obviously intertwined, writing and publishing are very separate endeavors that require a separate mindset. In my creative writing courses, we were encouraged to be experimental and nurture our creativity. We were in New York City, so we were often encouraged to attend events in the literary community. I went to poetry slams for spoken word. I went to story slams like The Moth and countless reading events. But in my book publishing courses, on the other hand, we focused on the tangible aspects of selling a book. Who is the reader? Who is going to buy this book? And how is the publishing house going to make money from selling this book? We drafted profit and loss statements where we calculated how much we could offer an author in an advance payment while still being profitable. We drafted jacket copy, marketing plans, and even mock book proposals. We pretended to be literary agents pitching the book to a publisher, or a publisher considering a book for publication. This sentiment of separating writing and publishing is something that is echoed by many authors working today. I think it's important to remember that writing is art and deeply personal in many cases, while publishing is business and ultimately not personal. I have another video that goes into differences between how professional versus amateur writers think about their craft. This is one of them, so if you want more tips like that, check out that video. My final takeaway from my creative writing courses is that writer friends are really essential. No matter what genre you're writing in, writing is often an intensely personal act. Whether they're based on your life or someone you know, or they're entirely made up, stories are often very personal to you. And it's an incredibly vulnerable thing to share that work with someone. So having someone you can lean on to support you through that, and also someone who can give you honest feedback, is so important. And I found that workshops are an amazing place to nurture those relationships. I still keep in touch to this day with one of the friends I made in my creative writing workshop. Our feedback styles were just so aligned, and we understood each other's goals with our own stories that we ended up meeting outside of the course setting. We became close and learned a lot of things about each other's life just through what we were expressing in our stories. To be honest, she knows certain things that some of my other friends outside of the writing realm don't know, just because it came up in my work. So because of that, I feel like our relationship is super special. I still remember her stories to this day, and she remembers mine. And I know I can lean on her anytime I need an honest, brutal take on some type of creative piece. It can admittedly be very hard to find writer friends, but if you have them, nurture those relationships and don't let them go. Let me know in the comments if you've ever considered taking a creative writing course or workshop of some kind, or if you have, I would love to hear about your experiences and if any of your lessons align with mine. I have another video with more background on how I became a book editor after my college experience, so you can check that out if you want some more insight. If you liked this video, please give me a thumbs up. It helps let me know that you liked it. And don't forget your free story self-assessment worksheet waiting for you in the description below. You can also see my newsletter website down there and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on my next video. Thanks so much for watching and happy writing.